Back to Miller. Oh, my goodness.
Herbert.
Sidearm sling, and it's a touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, good spin move by Filipowski for the news. Give him 9.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This is your host Ryan Coyle. As we are fully in the swing of training camp now, a lot of teams have been in practice for about a week. Some teams are just reporting today and throughout the rest of this week. But football's back, baby. We're here. Practices are going. The pads are on. The helmets are on. And it's right around the corner. College football will be here before you know it. But today, we will be starting our annual Beef Up Front series where I go through, predict every game for the entire NFL season, come up with the standings, and then I'd give a preview of each division. But this year we're going to be doing a little differently. Last year we segmented them in the previous 2 years into the division breakdowns. This year we're just going to be doing team by team. We're still going to go in order of division record, and today we'll be starting with the NFC East. So this is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles segmented episode because they're in first place. Next episode will be the Cowboys, the Giants, and then the Commanders, and so on. But a little bit shorter episodes, so not one big lengthy piece. So these should be relatively easier to consume. But I have the Philadelphia Eagles kicking us off with our NFL preview series, and I have them going 13-4 this season, 5-1 in the division. That's good enough to get them the number one overall seed. Last year they went 14-3, had a very, very good year, as we know, with Jalen Hurts taking that leap to being that franchise quarterback. The Eagles earned the 1 seed, eventually lost in the Super Bowl to the Chiefs 38-35. We had them predicted as 11-6 last year, winning the NFC East, so we hit on that. I didn't think that they would be as good as they were, but they had a very, very good season. But this year I see similar success in their future. It will be interesting. Team hasn't won the NFC East back-to-back since I believe it was 2002, 2003, and 2003-2004 season when the Eagles did it back with Donovan McNabb and Andy Reid. So the Eagles are looking to make some history this year and be a repeat winner in the division. And when you look at this team, it all starts with the offense. We're going to break down the offense, the defense, talk about the head coach, Nick Sirianni, a little bit, a breakout player, and then a couple games to watch. But when you look at this team, it starts with the offense. They were really what carried them throughout the year last year. The defense had a great year as well for the most part until we got to the Super Bowl. But the offense is very, very talented. And after making the biggest jump last year in terms of production from any player in the league, Jalen Hurts earned himself. He was rewarded with a new contract extension worth north of $250 million. And that ties him to the Eagles for the foreseeable future as their franchise quarterback. Hurts and his dual threat ability, not just as the QB sneak artist that we saw, but using his legs to extend plays, design runs, all that good stuff. He's really the prime mobile quarterback in today's NFL. You could look at more elusive runners, I think, in like Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson, but we would definitely take Jalen Hurts throwing the football over either of those guys right now. Hurts leads the best offense in the NFC, in my opinion. The 49ers are up there, but the quarterback's still a question. I mean, we saw Brock Purdy come in and have a nice, second half of the season when he was filling in for Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo with the injury, but Brock Purdy also only played about half the games coming back from a major elbow injury. Is it going to be Brock Purdy? Is it going to be Sam Darnold? Is it going to be Trey Lance potentially even in the quarterback spot? Who knows? I think it's just still too big of a question mark, and that gives me the Eagles being the best overall offense in the NFC, potentially the entire NFL. But they do have a new play caller this year in Brian Johnson, last year's quarterback coach after Shane Steichen left and accepted the head coaching job in Indianapolis. So Hurts and Brian Johnson have a very good relationship. It'll be interesting to see how they mesh in terms of the play calling and how they feel each other on that. This Eagles team also has the best offensive line in the league, headlined by Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson, two of the premier players in the sport at their position, arguably the best tackle, or at least right tackle and center in all of football. But they both are in their 30s, and they both stayed healthy last season. That was a big part about the Eagles last year. 22 out of their 22 week one starters were healthy for the Super Bowl. So can Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson both stay healthy now that they're both into their 30s and another long season under their belt? That's going to be a major question mark for this team. Let's see if they continue to do that in 2023. But if they can, they showed no signs last year of slowing down. Landon Dickerson at left guard has turned into a very good young player. And Jordan Mailata at left tackle was up and down a little bit last year, but still got to remember he's still pretty raw to the game, and I think he's just going to continue to get better. He shows so much potential all the time. Just needs to improve some stuff and just become more of like a solid overall player. He'll make some big time highlight plays, but just a solid overall left tackle protecting a guy with that good of an offensive line in front of you on the other spots, and then all the playmakers the Eagles have. It is really key for Mailata to just be that blindside protector this year for Jalen Hurts. And then there is a right guard competition going on in training camp, it sounds like, between Cam Jurgens and Tyler Steen, the draft pick out of Alabama. I believe it was in the 3rd round this year, so that's something to watch for Eagles fans. But they also have an amazing group of playmakers to go with that amazing offensive line, headlined by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I think the best 1-2 punch in the NFL at the receiver spot. Could make a good argument for sure for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It might be a little bit biased coming from an Eagles fan, but A.J. Brown dominated last year in his first year. And Devontae Smith, I think if he was on, 4 or 5, besides 4 or 5 other teams, he might be the number 1 receiver on every other team in the league. I think it's just a really deadly 1-2 duo. And I think Devontae Smith could even take like another leap this year and potentially be viewed as, at the end of this season, the number 1 guy in that receiving group. A little bit of a question is who's going to step up and be the number 3 receiver? Is it going to be Quez Watkins, who's been there for the past few years, or Zacchaeus, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's bounced around the league a little bit, but he was a pretty productive player with the Falcons. Who's going to be that number 3 guy? Zach Pascal as well last year stepped up. He's in Arizona now, I believe. So maybe that 3 and 4 receiver spot, we don't really see that much of it, as the Eagles did a lot of 2 tight end looks over the past few years. But I'm excited to see the receiver number 3 battles shake out. But that 1-2 spot is locked down by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, 2 very, very good players. And then I'm also excited for this Eagles team to see what the running backs look like, headlined by 2 all-season pickups as Miles Sanders went out the door to Carolina. DeAndre Swift was acquired in a trade from the Lions, and then Rashad Penny was acquired from the Seahawks. 2 very talented guys. When they've been on the field, they've produced a lot, but they haven't really been able to stay healthy that much. They've battled injuries. It's going to be something to watch. If they're both able to stay healthy, who kind of is the alpha dog in that backfield? I'd say DeAndre Swift, just because of his overall ability and his ability as a pass catcher. But that remains to be seen. And then you still have a good mix of returning guys in the backfield as well, with Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell, who have both had their fair share of success in the Eagles uniform. So this team stays healthy on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to be the best offense in the NFC and potentially the NFL. When we go down to the defense, another group that it was very good last year, obviously getting that 14-3 record, the number 1 overall seed, but a group that did see some pieces go out the door, and a group that did give up 38 points and kind of got thrashed in the Super Bowl. You put up 35 points in a Super Bowl, you should win the game. The defense was the falling out, and that all the talk about the turf and whatnot, still, you gave up 38 points at the end of the day. I know the 1 touchdown was a Jalen Hurts fumble, but still, 30-plus points should be enough cushion, especially for how good that they were throughout the year. But Jonathan Gannon as the defensive coordinator is out. Sean Desai is in, which hopefully will be, Gannon got bashed on a lot, but the Eagles still statistically had one of the better defenses, but hoping for more aggressiveness. This is a team that has a lot of very talented players up front that could cause a lot of havoc. I'm looking forward to seeing some new wrinkles to this defense this year. But they did lose T.J. Edwards at linebacker as well. Their starting linebacker last year, who wore the dot on his helmet for the signal caller. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at safety went to the Lions. Kaiser White at linebacker, all are gone. And then the big loss was the defensive tackle, Javon Hargrave. He emerged as probably, top 5 or 6 defensive tackle in the NFL. He went out to our rival now, it seems like San Francisco, and got a big payday there. But the Eagles, I think, more than made up for it in the draft. As we know, that they went heavily on players from Georgia, and they were able to get arguably the best player in the draft, Jalen Carter at defensive tackle, who fell due to some character concerns. And they also got a steal in Nolan Smith, the edge rusher, both of those guys out of Georgia. Smith fell due to a pec injury that he suffered last year and maybe some concerns over his weight, but 2 very good value picks and guys that should be able to come in and compete for playing time from day one. Jalen Carter, I'm expecting a big kind of prove it year. Don't let me fall to number 9 in the draft. And the Eagles are going to reap the benefits of that. I think they have a top 5 pass rusher in the NFC and probably a top 10 pass rusher overall in the entire NFL in Hassan Reddick. He's had double-digit sacks 3 straight years now, and they have a big defensive lineman in Jordan Davis, who I'm expecting a big year from in year 2. I mean, one of the largest human beings, I think, in the NFL. Another guy out of Georgia. This defense is littered with Georgia guys from those stacked defensive teams over the past few years that should hopefully carry over into the NFL. But Jordan Davis, I guess you could say underwhelmed a little bit, but he wasn't expected that much. When he had Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and Milton Williams all in front of him, his role was kind of limited. I think he's going to have a more increased role this year, rotating him with Jalen Carter, with Fletcher Cox, and then Milton Williams, who's also been a very serviceable role player as well. That could be one of the best, if not, top 5 defensive tackle groups in the entire NFL. And then if you look at Josh Sweat, who's been a guy who's, I believe, going into year 5 or 6, he's just continued to get better and better, as solid as they come. He's good for like 8 to 11 sacks, I think, this year. And then we already touched on Fletcher Cox a little bit, but you have him, and then you have Brandon Graham as well. Still providing good, veteran leadership and good snaps to give depth. They're not the players that they used to be, but still very good players and very good locker room pieces. Nicholas Morrow was another guy that was picked up in free agency to fill in the linebacker role, the spot left by TJ, by Kaiser White, and then Nakobe Dean, another guy out of Georgia, will look to be the signal caller and have the spotlight on him at linebacker this year. A bit undersized, going to see how that translates. But he was the leader of that Georgia defense, and now he's going to have the chance to be the signal caller and the guy in the middle of the defense for this new look Eagles defense. Secondary took some hits, losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to the Lions and Marcus Epps to the Raiders. It looks like they're going to be relying on undrafted free agent Reed Blankenship from last year, who definitely showed some flashes. Let's see if he can be a full-time starter. And Terrell Edmonds via the Steelers through free agency. Those look to be our 2 safeties, with Blankenship being more of the center field type guy, and then with Edmonds playing more around the box. Look for a potential trade, though. There has been rumors of Budda Baker potentially, but look for a potential trade for a safety to kind of shore up that spot. I think that could be something area of concern for this defense right now. And then they were able to, after some offseason juggling, be able to retain both Darius Slay and James Bradbury at corner. On the outside, it sounded like Darius Slay was going to get released, but they were able to rework his contract, and they were able to sign Bradbury back. And then you have Maddox on the inside, one of the better slot corners in the league, another guy that does get banged up from time to time now. Slay is at 32 years old right now, and James Bradbury is 29. So I am worried about a potential decline another year, a long year to say that as well on the tires. We'll see if they can still be one of the better corner duos in the league, but a little bit worried about that. Coach grade, I'm going to give Nick Sirianni a B+. I mean, 2 years as an NFL head coach, and he took his team to the playoffs, and then he took his team to the Super Bowl and the best record in the NFC last year. I don't think you can give him that much worse than that. Adjustments-wise, especially in the Super Bowl, I think he kind of got toyed with by Andy Reid, and just that's going to come, I think, with more experience and more big games. He's a guy that I think the players really like and really like to play for, and has a good grasp of the locker room. I don't think it's crazy to call him a top 10 head coach in the NFL at this moment. My breakout player for the Eagles this year, I'm going to go with that linebacker that's going to be in the middle of that defense in Nakobe Dean. He has everything in front of him that he needs to succeed, as we talked about. Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, 2 high draft picks on the defensive line. Hassan Reddick, Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. Just a loaded defensive line in front of him. They're going to do all the work. He's just got to be the cleanup guy. Is he going to be all right in coverage? That's a bit of a question, but he can set himself up to be, the captain of this defense for the foreseeable future. I really think Nakobe Dean is in for a big season. He was the alpha dog, the leader, the go-to guy on that really stacked Georgia defense back in 2021. I think he could be that type of linebacker for this Philadelphia Eagles team and really be a tone setter going forward. So he's my breakout player for the Eagles this year. And then 2 games to watch. I have highlighted Week 11 at the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, obviously with the Super Bowl rematch. The Kelsey brothers facing off against each other. Andy Reid against his former team yet again. That's going to be one of the most watched, viewed games of the season. And then Week 13 versus the 49ers. It's kind of weird not having the Cowboys as one of the 2 games to watch, but I think the Super Bowl rematch and then last year's NFC Championship rematch, especially with all the shit that's been talked throughout this offseason between the 49ers and the Eagles due to Hassan Reddick sacking Brock Purdy and injuring his elbow, knocking him out, and then Josh Johnson getting knocked out, and the 49ers being down to no quarterbacks. All the back and forth with that, and then as well with all the stuff about the Eagles with the turf. If we had the turf, we would have been or better grass, we would have won that game because of our defensive line. We're going to put some of those debates to rest, I think, this offseason, maybe put it behind us, not entirely because the stakes won't be as big. But still, I think that could be an NFC Championship rematch this year, and then a Super Bowl rematch as well with Eagles Chiefs and Eagles 49ers. So that'll do it for the Philadelphia Eagles preview. As I said, we'll be working all the way down the list. So our second place team, to tease it, we have the Cowboys. So they'll be our next episode as part of this series, but short, 12 to 15-minute episodes, and then we'll just be going through all 32 teams until we're done, and then we'll do one big episode breaking down award winners and then my playoff bracket and my eventual Super Bowl matchup and Super Bowl champion. So excited to really be ripping through this content over the next few months as we get closer and closer to the NFL season. We are about 6 weeks away from game time, so really excited. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Please make sure to like, subscribe, tune into every episode in the series. We'll have you covered from point A to point B, and that's all for this episode, and we'll talk soon.